celebrated by critics. However, there was still a battle with the people of Calais, which the people of Calais won. And in 1895, the monument was unveiled on a large, high pedestal because they thought it made it seem more heroic. Rodin, however, wanted the work to be shown as it is here in the gardens of the Musée Rodin, low down. Why? Well, he wanted these figures to seem part of the fabric of the city. He wanted the spectator, metaphorically, and it can't literally walk into the sculpture, but he wanted the spectator to be able to project him or herself into the work, as Rodin put it, to get as deeply as possible into the sacrifice and drama of the tragedy here. And it's that that gives the work its expressive force. The work struck a chord across the Channel, and the British government commissioned a cast of the monument in 1913. Rodin himself travelled to London to find suitable locations. It now sits on Victoria Tower Gardens, in the shadow of the Houses of Parliament. In 1883, Rodin met a young sculptor called Camille Claudel. He was 43, she was just 19, and he immediately fell in love with her. And Camille soon became Rodin's student, mistress and collaborator for the next 15 years. Camille wanted marriage, but Rodin refused to leave his longtime companion, Rose Buret. Deeply distressed, Camille went into self-imposed seclusion in Paris and suffered a mental breakdown. Her face, though, sometimes a vision of serenity, other times a tragic muse, can be seen on many of Rodin's sculptures. By the early 1890s, Rodin was at the height of his artistic powers and the artist to get for public commissions. And in 1891, the celebrated French novelist, Émile Zola, then president of the Société des Gens de Lettres, an eminent literary society, commissioned Rodin to produce a monument for another celebrated French writer, Honoré Balzac, who died back in 1850. And this is the result. Balzac was a robust, radical free spirit, among whose most celebrated books was La Comédie Humaine, which, like Dante, explored human fleshly temptations. The problem for Rodin, though, was because Balzac had died 4 decades before, he hadn't met him or seen him. So what did he do? Well, he read the novels, he went back to Touraine, where Balzac had lived, and also he got contemporary portraits, early photographs and even caricatures. Better still, he got in touch with Balzac's old tailor and had a suit made up to be the exact same size that he stuffed and had in the studio. Consequently, he could get as close to Balzac as possible. Rodin said he wanted to produce an immortal monument to one who boils over with passion and who frantically violates his own body. And the result is something larger than life, that in a way is tantamount to his creative power rather than a physical likeness. Like the burghers of Calais, he made studies of Balzac's head, and then he proposed the idea of a naked monument, but that was too controversial. So in the end, he clad him with this giant robe, like the one that Balzac was reputed to wear, a kind of dressing gown come monk's robe, which in a way hints not just at his creative power, but is his sexual one too. And when critics saw this work, they said it was like some kind of ancient monolith. And one person remarked that it was tantamount to a volcanic eruption. At the end of 1895, Rodin purchased a house at Meudon on the outskirts of Paris. With his own fame firmly established, Rodin was then courted by the celebrities of the day, particularly politicians, writers and artists, many of whom commissioned portrait busts. These included the poet Baudelaire, the English man of letters George Bernard Shaw, and the future Prime Minister of France, Georges Clemenceau. In 1897, the first major study of Rodin's drawings was published. Rodin always said that his drawings were the key to his work. He would sketch the model without ever taking his eyes off her. And when a particular moment caught his attention, he would do a whole series of line drawings and watercolours. Later, Rodin turned his attention to dance, and when the Cambodian dance troupe became the sensation of Paris in 1906, Rodin rushed along to sketch them. And later, some of the more erotic drawings were turned into sculptures, such as this one, of Iris, messenger of the gods. There's an intensity of vision in these works that seems almost gynecological. They're among the most erotic of any drawings and sculptures made in the 19th century, showing the deft touch of a mature artist, but also perhaps the yearnings of an aging man. In 1908, Rodin rented studio space in the Hotel Biron in Paris. The premises were soon afterwards threatened with demolition, and Rodin was given notice to quit. But he resisted, suggesting he'd bequeath all his works and his collections to the state on the condition that he remain there and that on his death it would be turned into a museum. The government agreed to Rodin's wishes, and today, as the Musée Rodin, it remains a lasting tribute to his life and work. At the end of January 1917, Rodin finally married his lifelong companion, Rose Buret. But ironically, within 25 days, Rose died. And then Rodin himself died a few months later, on November the 17th. A week later, Rodin was buried with his wife here in the grounds of the family home at Meudon, appropriately enough, with a magnificent bronze cast of Rodin's thinker above their graves. Because of the First World War, there was no state funeral. Nonetheless, politicians and dignitaries from all over the world came to the ceremony to pay homage to the man who, passionately and thoughtfully, had put sculpture right back in the mainstream of Western art.